the humanitarian situation that he asserted last week. You remember when he called on the Ugandan authorities not to close its exports market for the people of South Sudan. This is because he feared that the situation could get worse for the 8.9 million people who are already food insecure in South Sudan. And you know that Mayen did mention that South Sudan is going to be affected desperately by the global food insecurity that is being expected to come. Now here, he is in the studio to tell us more about that and how prepared the country is to respond to the effects of the anticipated food insecurity in South Sudan. Now, I want to say, Honorable Peter Mayen, you are welcome to iRadio Sundown program this evening.
Yeah, you're highly welcome.
Thank you. How is your ministry doing?
My ministry basically is doing what it can in terms of addressing the humanitarian situations and also in terms of responding to the various disasters that are happening.
Very good. And that is the reason we are actually here, so that we can be able to hear more of that from you. From a humanitarian perspective, what's this upcoming global food insecurity?
There are many factors that had led to this global food insecurity. One of it is the actually climate change, the war in Ukraine, and given to the fact that already before the war in Ukraine and before the unexpected climate change that has led to drought, floodings in various parts of the globally or various parts of the country, these are some of the contributing factors to that. So the climate change, it's actually a major contributing factor to these devastated humanitarian situations globally. And this actually call for both looking at the aspect of adaptations and mitigations, which is actually a lengthy discussions that we could continue in. And also the war in Ukraine has actually led to a global food insecurity. And so these are the other factors that we can really try to talk about it.
You are bringing a question of the war in Ukraine to be a contributing factor to the situation in South Sudan. But how is that actually concerning the people of South Sudan?
In simple terms, actually not only South Sudan, the global Ukraine has been the global exporter of grains, and as the war of Ukraine and Russia continue, and the various sanctions that has been laid in, so this has affected not only South Sudan, but actually has led to global food insecurity, and of course, many countries are aware of that, including South Sudan.
All right, getting to know this, you know you are the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management in South Sudan. What is the estimated number of the people who are likely to be affected desperately by this forthcoming global food insecurity?
8.9 people, South Sudanese, will be severely affected. This is not just people that will be affected, people that will definitely be unable to have food and bread on the table, and this causes a serious humanitarian situation. And out of 8.9 people, you have 4.7 million children that will be malnourished, and they will really be in a serious food insecurity, hunger, and malnutrition in those aspects. We also expected that we're going to have like 1.7 refugees also will be affected, and that's actually leads to the fact that South Sudan is heading to a serious humanitarian situations in the country. And if you talk about it, we were going to all have only few, about 3 to 0.7 people, or 3.7 people. This will be only that families that can be able to afford food and bread on the table. So This is the highest figure we have ever reached in our humanitarian history, where we have 8.9 people that are in daily of humanitarian assistance, particularly food, water, shelter, bread on the table.
But Honorable, why must you think the number should be as high as 8.9 to be severely or desperately affected by the expected food insecurity challenge?
Of course, the country have experienced for the last 3 years a very devastated floods in the country, that actually the livelihood of the people have been affected. And in most parts of the country, the communities have not settled in terms of to go on with their protections. And this is one of the contributing factor. Also, the floods it's also contributed to the climate change in the regions, and some parts of areas experience droughts, and also the desert locust invasions in eastern Equatoria was also another factor to this. And other factor, which is one factor, is the communal conflict that it happens in most part of the country, in Upper Nile, in Tumbura, and apparently that's continued to happen, even though it has subsidized in Warab and Abyei. This has led the communities that they never had the chance to cultivate, and that has threatened seriously in terms of food security. And among others, that include the movement of troops, the political instability. This has contributed greatly to why we have 8.9 people that are food insecure.
Honorable, you know that South Sudanese have undergone a series of troubles, a series of hardships in life. And are you trying to say that this will be a new challenge to the people of South Sudan, given the fact that they had already gone through a lot of suffering?
Indeed. It may be a new challenge, but it may be usual if we keep the resilience communal spirit that we had. Back in the days in 1990s and back in the days in 1970s, we had experienced all this. It's a challenge that its time has come for the South Sudanese community to be more resilient and more productive in order to meet the challenge that's ahead of us.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Peter Mayem, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, and to all our listeners of the Sundown on iRadio 98.6 FM in Juba, wherever you're getting us at this point in time. We are talking about the humanitarian situation in South Sudan, and you did hear from him that 8.9 people in South Sudan are likely to be affected desperately by the forthcoming food insecurity, the global food insecurity that the world, of course, expects. And in that case, he's here to give us more light in regards to that, and also to share with us on how prepared South Sudan is in terms of responding to this global upcoming challenge. Meanwhile, where you have concerns as well, be able to share with us on 0911 986 986 or 0922-986-986, or you can send me a text message on 0913-986-986, so we can be able to hear out from you your concerns. And in case you also want to give a comment on how basic things South Sudan can respond to this upcoming challenge, be able to share with us as well. Good evening, iRadio.
Good evening.
Yes?
It's Uncle Peter from Rank.
Uncle Peter from Rank. Welcome to the Sundown.
Thank you very much. I am grateful to hear from our minister.
Yeah, raise up your voice a little bit. You are somehow low.
Okay, it is not late at the moment. And then our government should lay down the measures to do before we are attacked by the crisis. This is the only thing that he should be telling us now. We have land and rain have just then let us not predict negativity. We should talk on what we can do at the moment. Thank you very much.
And Uncle, what are you as well doing as a citizen of South Sudan? What are you doing at your capacity to respond to this upcoming challenge?
To me, I am cultivating in a small scale to prepare for the coming crisis, if it happens to be so.
All right, thank you very much for being part of today's edition of the Sundown program, the Monday's edition for that matter. And in that case, in a short while, I will be giving then the chance to the guests I have in the studio. Good evening, iRadio.
Good evening, brother.
Yes, who's talking to us and where are you calling from?
You are talking to Garang Alex.
Alex from where?
Garang Alex from Corullium.
Garang Alek from Cor William. Welcome to the Sundown.
Thank you very much, my brother. I really appreciate the topic that you actually brought out. Indeed, the question that was raised by the minister was actually a good point to be discussed. When you see the look at the current nature of our country, South Sudan, so there are a lot of issues.
We lost Garang Alek from Cor William before hearing out from him his own concern of the discussion we are making up at this point in time. Well, you can still be able to share with us on the same studio line so that we can hear out your own concern on 0911-986-986 or 0922-986-986, or you can send us a text message on 0913-986-9866 so that we can be able to hear your own concern over this discussion, and if at all it means a comment on how the South Sudanese people should basically be prepared in order to respond to this global food insecurity coming up, then I should be able to state it as well as we carry on with our discussion. Good evening, iRadio. Demunu? Meju mingiada inta marab tuwale meju.
Okay, I'm paying Bernard Katawan, Bernard could be English, what were the radio? Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm paying Bernard could be English, I don't want to forget the radio.
Teiva, Nehina Vinagis for Gomudota humanitarian situation in South Sudan. Wo Semina Usbal Fat and Endanakan statement mean Uzirta humanitarian affairs wo disaster management. Fogo yan shakla gihasil fi Ukraine ana kiti tasma shakla fi Ukraine te be shakla dakde yan fi bukun yan jian badin fi alam kulu asan kida wazir maana guide fi dagal studio maana ina asan be sharik maana kulu yan kif junuba Sudan bija yan respond fogo muruta ta akel dalo masalan wosul tuwale fi samanto yawo mujud mana fi dagal studio asan bijua bu mukalmata kon bardo.
Okay.
Yes. طيب شكرا مجو توالي ممكن برجع توالي لوزير تena موجود معنا في داخل studio عشان بيشارك معنا يعني some of the concerns that were raised. We had uncle there from Renka and Biasalu, and we should now be talking about how South Sudan is going to respond to this. There na berija to wallet Honorable Peter Mayen yana mumkin ta bisharik be kulu muslimin tena yana Junuba Sudan be endu shunua sade to respond to this upcoming global food insecurity. Marhab to wale Honorable.
Thank you very much. Actually, the response requires a cohesive approach that actually encompasses all, and everyone has to have a role to play. Because in the next 9 months, the world and South Sudan, being part and parcel of the world, will really face a severe anger that's in place. And given the fact that South Sudan is a landlocked country, it will experience difficulties in terms of access, including transportations and importing of either food commodities or non-food commodities or any other essential commodities for the agricultural projects. And what the government of South Sudan they are embarking in right now, the consultations are underway with the partners, and also with the key ministries to ensure that, yes, it's time for us South Sudanese now to preposition food as a commodity as it is, as we look ahead of the future. But even though we position enough of food, it will not really address the devastated humanitarian situation are we in, or even to ensure that there's a food security in place. We are actually here embarking and encouraging all communities to embark in a resilience agricultural activities at all scale. The previous call actually have talked of him being already in the field, and I also want to tell him that I have already started also farming as a minister in my own family. So the time has come to revisit our history. And when we talk about the history, we know is a country that had come out of a war, and our survival strategies that we survived was basically it was empowering the small skills, the family skills, agricultural skills at the boomers, payams, as it heads to the state on this contact. So there is a comprehensive actions that will be communicated very soon to South Sudanese. But we're not going to wait, because we only have 9 months to either survive out of that anger or face that severe anger. So the mechanism right now, we have no any other options. We must all go to farm as a matter of reality on the ground. For those in the village, I wish them they would hear me loud enough that they need to cultivate as much acres as they can and embark in agriculture sector to improve the food security. Because whatever that we may proposition as food, whatever we may import in the country as food, it's going to be severe. Bearing in mind that our neighbors right now, they are also experiencing droughts, and they may not have the capacity enough to buy or import enough food to South Sudan as it used to be. That means I'm talking about Uganda, Kenya, and other neighboring countries. And this is as a result of the climate change. We also have to bear in mind in most of the country now, they are experiencing drought. And the flood is just also in the corner. So the best or the early right now, we impact in the agriculture sector as whatever scale. And we ask the partners to invest as much as they can to support the local farmers, improve the local transportations. This is actually is a temporary exit as we speak. The medium exit is basically to look at the industry, the food industry itself, because it's also going to be another contributing factor that is definitely going to harm our economic situations in the country, and that of course the government has a strategy towards it. And then looking at the large farmers scale, the government also has a comprehensive agricultural master plan that involved a number of the ministers in place. As a Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, we have a Department of an Early Warning System of any disaster that is basically to occur in future, which also call for alert, that's also called at mitigation mechanism, and then adaptations comes all with all other relevant ministries regards to their functions. The message today we want the South Sudanese to hear is that as a result of the climate change, the war in Ukraine, South Sudan may be heading to a serious food insecurity in few months to come. And as such, it's important that the governments work closely with the South Sudanese, and we have to join hands and we have to look at the negative factors that actually they have been actually an obstacle to our capacity to produce, including the absence of peace. So we now must accept peace at the expense of anger. We must accept ourselves. We must prioritize agricultural protections, food security, more than politics and other issues. So I would really love to talk on a number of issues, لكن بكل صراحة أنا داير نأكد للكل المواطنين في جنوب السودان بأننا هنكون عندنا من أحد الكوارث، هيكون actually كوارث بتاع مجاعة، ودي ما هيكون بس مشكلة في جنوب السودان، هتكون مشكلة في العالم كله. ولازم نحن حاليا نبدأ نعتمد على الزراعة ونقدر نحل كل القضايا، أو ما يعني نخش في الجذور اللي عندها صعوبات عشان نحن نقدر ننتج زيادة ونحمي بلدنا ونكون جنوبين حينما نمر في هذه المشاكل.
طيب وشكرا جزيلا Honorable Peter Mayen be yana clarifications alitaja ramu le kulu mustamiin tena aliza ay radio fi hasi samanta asde wajibuna kala salit ninu min temenia what isni 20 gigabyte sakamsa tamamam kula kun basi male barami Sundown fi ay radio ena taki fi Junuba Sudan wo fi marhala ta asde mumkin MC fasil besiti ala baden na birija sanja sharik maakum ketir fogo modu tena taase wo kaman lenas algeni tabe na gubarte ina gubal shuya endana a story of some children who have been deported from Kenya, and so Honorable Peter Mayen is actually related to that story, and so in that case Bardo Gija will clarifications where necessary in regards to the deportation of the children from Kenya. In that case we go out for a short break. Yala baden na bireja sanja sharik makum ketir fi Banamita Sundown.
The best kept secret is no longer a secret. Considered the #1 paint by most, Rigo Paints proves year after year that you can have world-class paint that is also reasonably priced. We have decorative, industrial, automotive paints and waterproofing solutions in over 6,000 colors for all your painting needs, with guaranteed protection of 3 to 15 years, depending on the product used on your interior and exterior surfaces. Get this paint in packs of 1 liter, 4 liter and 20 liters. For more information, visit www.rigopaints.co.ug or follow us on all social media platforms. Rigo Paints, even the walls like it.
تطعيم كوفيد-19 بحمي إيتا وناس اللي تجيحبوا من أيان الشديد اللي سببوا فيروس كورونا. ناس من عمر 18 سنة بقدر أتنو لومون تطعيم كوفيد-19، وكمان نسوان ورجال قدر يكون عنده إيال في مستقبل، ونسوان الحملانين، وكمان نسوان الجرادة إيال. وتطعيم ده ما بيأثر كان إتدير ولده، وكمان هو كويس وما بعمل لتا حاجة بطال، بالذات لأمهات الجرادة إيال، وكمان وما عنده أي مشكلة مع إيال الجرادة. عشان كده تكون في صحة الكويس لإيتا ولأسرتك، كده إتعتنو الليلة. لمعلومات زيادة إتبقدر دقو في رقم المجاني 6666. رسالة دي جيبوا ليتكم من وزارة الصحة حكومة جنوب السودان، وكمان عملوا بمساعدة الناس تا أمريكا.
Right, still a very good evening now at 31 minutes after 5 p.m. You are all listening to the Sundown program on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. And this is your common ground for all the latest information happening in South Sudan. Now, when you have any concern of our conversation, to only be able to share with us your thoughts on 0911-986-986, you can also call 0922-986-986 or share with us via our SMS line on 0913-986-986. Good evening, iRadio.
Yes, I'm Joseph from Jebel.
Joseph in Jebel. Tamarab Tuwali.
So I think what our leader is talking about, it is the fact that it is coming. But now it is the right time for the leaders to seek for God's face and His righteousness now. Let them go and look for God for us to pass that disaster. I think that's the only way. Because if we try to go for cultivation, you see now, like for example, me, I'm from a place called Bageri. Now, if I want to go and cultivate, how can I go to that place now, where there is insecurity?
All right, so
go back to God. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph, for your concern. Good evening, iRadio. Well, it's unfortunate I lost the person also trying to share with us at this point in time. We hear there from Joseph from Jebel, who called to actually make a comment in regards to our discussion. Good evening, iRadio.
Yes.
Yes.
How are you?
Good. Are you talking to us, and where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Wow. My name is Bak Albino.
Your name again?
I'm calling from Wow.
What's your name, please?
My name is Bak.
Back from Wow, Marab Tuwale.
Yeah, I'm happy for your good program.
Yes, go ahead, please. Well, I lost back there from Wow, who was trying to share with us. Good evening, iRadio.
Good evening.
Yes.
Yes, we are speaking to Alphonse from Minkaman.
Alphonse from Minkaman, Marab Tuwale.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much. My question is the guest in the studio, Honorable Peter. Is that how can we be a food secure if there is no proper security in the country? I've seen that our people are pleading because of the security to neighboring countries, and Honorable is talking about we should be a food secure. We mean that we can back on agriculture, and talking about agriculture and the situation is still as threatened like the way how it is now. How can we be food security?
All right. Thank you very much for your concern. Taib, they can Alphonse, min kaman mungkin wai mukalma nehna bireja le kono boltina vidal studio. Good evening, iRadio.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, Alison from Melekia.
Alison from Melekia, welcome.
So thank you very much for the Minister, Humanitarian Affairs, and the Disaster Management. So it's good for him to talk to us South Sudanese so that we prepare for the disaster that is coming. What I will say, let us all South Sudanese look for the way of agriculture, because agriculture is the only way that can bring us out from that problem. And akilda we are awel haja. Then if rural development gali food first. Awel akil kan maafi زول ما بقدر رافي مدرسة ولا بقدر اشتغل ذاته. فعشان كده أكل ده مهم خالص. وحاجة أنا بكلمني وزير تدير الحكومة بتاعنا كلمون يعني كنت لنا organized forces دل في محلات في قرية دل. كده يكون في organized forces هناك عشان بيشيبوا ناس بقدر رافي زراعة وحتى organized forces كلمون كله كمان. يعني كل زول زراعة ده ما قال لك زول تاني يعني كده معين. زي رئيس بتاعنا عنده مزرعة بتوعه. ويعني قاعد مالزارته يعني ناس كل كل عنده زراعة حاجة المهمة أنا بتكلم كريج عن سؤال الناشونال سيكوريتي دي حاجة أنا قاعد أسأل من وزير كلو ودي قدام كلامون حلو كلامنا.
طيب شكرا.
ما حلو كلام ده شكرا.
شكرا جزيلا ناليسون بمشاركتك من ملكيان. ممكن برجع لديفان تينا في داخل الاستوديو موجود معنا في هذا الزمن تحصل غنربول ممكن نحن ولا انت بحاول جوابه يعني مكالمات ال some people actually raise and Joseph min Jebel he was saying yes, if people the politicians need to begin actually attending churches this time around because that's how best you can actually get more advices on how to carry on with work. Well, let us get to Alphonse from Minkaman. You were saying how you talked about people to go and avace their agricultural fields, but with the insecurity all around, he's actually worried how this is going to be achieved by local farmers. You want to go to your garden, but you also fear when you get there you can be hunted by any unknown gunman. So how is this going to be possible when there is insecurity in many parts of South Sudan?
As usually said, a common enemy unites people. So from different contexts, I have said earlier that we need to accept peace at the expense of anger. Meaning that now is no longer time for any hostilities among ourselves. It is time for us to cease hostilities, because even if I stay in the bush, I'll die out of anger. But if I cease hostility and accept peace, then we both of us can join hand and cultivate and have a bread on the table. In regards to Al-Qadiyya Beno, our national emblem, the first thing we say, "Oh God." So everyone will answer for himself, those who perhaps may not go to church. So South Sudan, generally, we actually believe in God. And this is not a joking matter. When you hear a politician calling for hostilities to be ceased and calling for massive population to invest in agriculture, cultivations, we see the danger ahead of it. Because even our politicking or politics will add no value when we are hungry. For the SPLM-IO to say, SPLM-IO, they need strength. They should have eaten some food in order to cry louder. For the SPLM to say, SPLM-OYE, they need food. The OPP, they need food. So I need food. So food, as one of the caller earlier mentioned, in the rural development, of course, is the key factor that adds you energy. You know, I ate little food, that's why I still have the strength to speak today to the audience. And the most worried factor is the children that are currently malnourished, and they will maybe really face a severe food insecurity. But this brings me to a very important point. Are we lazy as South Sudanese? If not, then I do believe, even though the world will experience global food insecurity, that we will do what we can as South Sudanese, because we are resilient communities, are resilient nations, and that's why we are South Sudanese. Otherwise, we would have never achieved our independence. So I don't think anger will defeat us. Let us go to that.
All right, Honorable. Thank you very much for these clarifications. Le kulu mseme internet iRadio ana mikilemu and mumkin hina bodi furisal besita le mukalma wala mukalmaten wala talata kida le nas al aju yana sharik mana fi hasimudote na hasade yana lo de masalan suwal wal de yana your comment of our conversation to wal na bikilemu into marhab asan bisharik mena tuwali. Good evening, iRadio.
Good evening, iRadio.
Yes.
I'm in my place. I would like you to persevere with me. My first question goes to the minister.
Yes, James Dur.
Have a farm? Yes. Did he have a farm that he made as his example to the people?
This is my first question. Number two.
Come again. What did you say, please?
I say this minister himself
Yes.
has a farm that he has already made as example to the people, or he's just talking to the people to make it and he don't have his own farm.
Okay.
This is the first question. Number two, by then we have thousands of tractors that were brought, and these tractors have no benefit as we speak. Are you trying to tell us that this anger should not defeat us when when the tool meant for agriculture are used by individuals and their benefit is not seen by the public?
Okay.
How did it not defeat us while the thing that meant for agriculture are not seen, and the budget also is allocated to individuals who don't even have a single farm?
All right. Another concern?
Yes. The last question is that should you really justify the budget that allocated to agriculture, because the agriculturalists are funds? Those who don't have ability, they can be supported by the budget that allocated, and those who are willing. How much that is allocated to agricultural sector, despite the insecurity that is rampant all over the country? Do you know the budget that is allocated to agriculture?
All right. Okay. Thank you, James Duor, for your concerns. Tabe, I read a good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, who's talking to us and where are you calling from?
Yes, speaking to Jimmy from Juba.
Jimmy from Juba, yes.
Yes. I would like to ask the minister in the studio.
Yes.
The word they used to say, let us implement peace, let us accept peace. I really don't understand. Like he himself, has he accepted peace? And then with who do they want to accept peace? The second thing, when they talk of agriculture, all the civilians that are in the bushes, or else to say in the villages, they are the right people whom their work is to cultivate, and usually they are the ones who feed the country. And now that they are placed into the towns, into the urban centers, do they think they as ministers, will they really implement the agriculture policy? As the other caller said earlier, that budgets are being allocated for agriculture issues. And then the agriculture is being sung to be the backbone of the country. And there is no proof being seen. People are still depending in other countries like Uganda. So where is the future of this country? It is no use to say agriculture is the backbone of the country.
All right. Thank you very much, Jimmy, for your questions to the guests. Tabe, maybe the last concern now. Good evening, iRadio. iRadio, good evening. Well, it's unfortunate we cannot connect with the person who was trying to reach us lastly as our last caller, but we may now compensate with another last caller. Good evening, iRadio. Misal Nur. Yes, Tong Alweta Marab Tuwale.
Yeah, shukran lekum. Nawasil barnamij. So jiddan ana sawte betagin shilel. The youth in the studio, Benyabatan Peter Mayan Majongli, while Nafatanin Mam, and a Bashuri radio Mr.
Tabe, Shualaxinu le Divan Tena Vidal Studio.
So all of them to Mobasher Loman. They mine about a fin into Nasna, Mayan Majongli, Fiwazara, Ashonal Insania. Zai ma fi ita kan moton zai nina wa baadaye mumkin nitabarja kaman ka moton ana swal bitana basani bidun kop bidun yi haka
Tabe wasul gidam tuwali tonga luet
shukran ana basala kida mayan majungdi ita masu humanitarian ne kulu yani inu hajat bijibu min bara wa ma fi haja biyamki le nas al-akhirin humanitarian معلوم كله حاجات جا عدن حاجات يعني في الزراعة زمان ناس بزروا معلوم انتوا ما قاعدين تعمل الامن يكون كويس انت ذاته كوزير بتاع الهيومانيتيريان اما وزير بتاع الهيومانيتيريان اكشن ليه انتوا ما قاعدين توفر الامن هنا
شكرا جزيلا تونغ الويت بمشاركتك ونجنا برجة والي لوزير الموجود معنا في داخل الاستوديو وزير ماين ماجونج ديت عشان بيشاركوا مع كل كونيانا السؤالات تكون واحد إننا كان جيمس دور من جوبا هنا بيكلموا ممكن تبي حاول جواب توالي honorable Peter Mayen قال هل نسيا انت عنده زراعة ولا you are just talking to influence the people to have their own gardens.
والله أنا كنت متوقع واحد يسألني السؤال ده. أنا عندي زراعة مزرعة بتاعي في كوجوك في عجيب. so لو في زول داري يجي يشوف.
alright.
عندي مزرعة تاني في ورالال. عندي مزرعة بسيط بتاع روس في أول وفي الأسبوع ده أنا ماشي نشوف مزرعة تانية ده في ليك ستيت.
طيب
دي إجابة مباشرة. فنحن هنا ما في مسألة، نحن ما قاعدين نكسر طلق، نحن قاعدين نتكلم في حقيقة في أرض الواقع والحاجات المستقبل الجاي في جنوب السودان. ونسبة مباشرة على المسألة بتاعت البادجت و what we allocated. Our focus now as a government has changed. It has changed in the previously we used to allocate a lot of funding to security issues and all this. Now it has changed that actually the focus is we debate the budget, which we still is not completed. Even if it is passed by the Council of Ministers, it is still yet goes to the National Parliament for further debates, for further adjustments. So our focus is actually in agriculture, in improving trade. The government want to use as much as enough resources that gets from the oil to boost up the agriculture and the industry that will enhance the economic growth. That is just basically to say that agriculture sector is no longer going to be underfunded as it has usually been. Building the middle class is the major focus of the government.
Yeah, you talked about the question of the tractors that were earlier donated, and they saying that there seems to be no value of these tractors now, and yet you are telling the people to go to farms.
The questions of the tractors is purely demonstrative. I have no questions, and I cannot really make a statement on that.
Okay.
But what I do know, even if the donated tractors cannot feed the 8.9 million people.
All right, let us get to Jimmy, who called us from Juba, trying to understand that offer the question of the implementation of the peace agreement, that whether you, the leaders, particularly as well, are willing to accept yourselves before it goes down to the other people to accept the peace, so that other programs like agriculture can actually flow smoothly.
I have been asked that question times and again. But I also ask myself, why are they asking that question? Because the 5 signatories to this agreement, we have formed one government. And we all have our various responsibilities. So why are people again wondering whether we have accepted ourselves or not? If we do not accept ourselves, would we have formed one government?
All right, thank you. I think you have answered in that case. He also talked about, agriculture is being practiced primarily by those at the grassroots. And he had witnessed a huge influx of people from the rural areas into the towns. And he's worried if this agricultural policy is going to be evicted as expected with the influx of people to towns.
We are talking of reality here. Previously, the country in general has been depending on oil, resources that were coming from the oil. Where we're heading now, we're heading into a situation that the whole world is actually setting up food reserve, and is also boosting its agriculture sector despite the impact of the climate change. As such, South Sudan is part and parcel of the global world. The agriculture industry, it has to be boosted. But now, from approach of communal resilience, the people taking the lead on that. And the situations is not like COVID-19 that just took us out of surprise. We still have allowance and time that are in place. Between now and then, the communities can begin to sit down as communities of South Sudan to rethink and re-strategize how best this should be addressed. This is not about the government, it's about people.
All right. Okay, Honorable, thank you. Let us get to Tong Alwet so that we close this chapter of the discussion, because I want to ask you something regards to the deportation of the children. And now, Tong Alwet was trying to ask each and every time there is funding into South Sudan to help in the humanitarian aspect, but people do not realize the implementation of the funding. Maybe you clarify to him actually what's going on, Honorable Peter.
What is going on is that whatever support that comes into humanitarian grounds, be it food, medicine, shelter, first look at the most vulnerable. Perhaps those who are not vulnerables may not realize it, but the most vulnerable ones realize the support we give.
All right, thank you very much. Now, let us get down to this before we wind up our discussions in the next few minutes. We were meant to understand that your ex-wife says she was shocked by the deportation of her son along with several others from Nairobi, Kenya. You know very well that on Thursday last week, the Kenyan government expelled 14 South Sudanese children related to you, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management. We are meant to understand also that the children are 7 girls and 7 boys. Maybe you share with our audience. Are you aware of these children who have been deported?
Yes, I am. The children's left on the 25th and 29th February 22 for studies in Kenya. They were accompanied by engineer Honorable Santo Machok Dit, my brother, who is married to an Ethiopian lady called Helen. My brother, his age is 38 years of age. And when they went to Kenya, they were received by the Kenyan embassy from the Republic of South Sudan, someone from the migration called Kur Garang. And my children had a cleared diplomatic passport, but by the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the migrations of South Sudan. So they went with the diplomatic passports that give them the diplomatic immunity. Then they were taken from the house to the house which I rent from a Kenyan lady that is called Maria at 300,000, that's Kenyan shilling, for the children initially to stay there. This was going to be the first experience for them to be in school after COVID-19 pandemic, and they were there to be there temporarily in that house. On the 23rd in March, Kenyan police from Kilimani arrested my children in their residence house at 12:20 at the midnight, despite their diplomatic status and without informing the government of Republic of South Sudan, neither the parent, of any crime that were committed by those children. The official from embassies were threatened, and also the caretaker of the children was also threatened. And the following few days, it happens while I was in Abyei, and the following few days, the government, the Kenyan's media, that is K24, issued a statement that there was a child trafficking against the caretaker of those children. That was my brother, Santo Machok, and myself, the minister, the national minister. This I thought was a media propaganda. After reaching out to the relevant authority, the DCI, which is Department of Criminal Investigations in Kenya, contacted me and asked me to come to Kenya over weekends to settle the issue of the children. I asked if there is any crimes. There was no crimes committed by my children, by myself, and Interpol police clarified that there was no crimes against you. However, the Kenyan department that is for criminal investigation, DCI, requested me to pay $100,000 US for my children to be released, or otherwise they threatened me that the children will be taken to Children Care Center or to court of law, and crimes such as child trafficking will be made against me. I said clearly, after I rejected the offer, the children were taken to Child Care Center in Mugara, that is around Kiambu, and my children were forced to be tested for DNA tests without approval, my approval or my consent. My children were threatened, mistreated, beaten, tortured by the Kenya Department of the Criminal Investigations in Kenya. And as this, my position was very clear, that one, this is what I said, and that was my position, that I will never pay a corrupt Department of Criminal Investigations of Kenyan's governments to redeem my children, because they have not committed any crimes and there was no case against them, and there was no case registered by the Interpol police of Republic of South Sudan and Republic of Kenya. Two, through the Foreign Affairs, I requested the government of Kenya to bring me back my 14 children home. And finally, home is home. And this brings me to the fact and the story that South Sudanese citizens have been receiving serious mistreatments across the neighboring countries, which basically is against humanity.
All right. Thank you very much, Honorable Peter Mayen, for coming to the Sundown this evening.
Thank you very much.
All right, to all our dear listeners, we have come to the end of today's edition of the Sundown program on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. We had a good conversation with Honorable Peter Mayen Majongdi, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Disaster Management, and we wind up our discussions here now. Score Sheet program coming up in a very short while. Thank you for listening, and my name is Moyo Jacob Felix.
It's time to swap. Swap to the best. Swap to the affordable. Swap to the fastest Zain 4G LTE.
Yes, for the existing subscribers who are not on the 4G compatible SIM card, it's time to swap. And for the new subscribers, don't hesitate to buy the 4G SIM card and ensure your handset supports LTE. Browsing is super fast like never before with Zain 4G internet. Swap your old SIM card to the 4G SIM card today from the nearest Zain MTN shop or authorized dealer. Subscribe to 4G data packages by dialing *102#. Choose your daily, weekly or monthly bundles. Zain Superfast Internet Experience is here to stay.
Zain is here for you. Wonderful world.
Zain, a wonderful world.